It's a chilly morning at the clearing. After a spell of warm weather, all of our snow disappeared in a few days. Pretty much all gone now except for the piles. We're going to look at some trees and shrubs today with regard to winter interest. And we'll start with one that everybody knows, paper birch or canoe birch or white birch. If there's one tree that everybody knows by its bark alone, it's this, with this nice white peeling bark, often revealing this kind of light amber colored color beneath. The famous birch from birch bark canoes and things like that. But the combination of the white color and the peeling bark really makes it stand out in the winter. So paper birch, also called white birch or canoe birch. We tend to notice trees and shrubs mostly in the warm season when they're in leaf, when they're flowering, when they're in fall color. But this far north, we have half the year is without leaves and flowers. So we do focus in the landscape on winter interest, those things on trees and shrubs that you have to look a little closer sometimes, but it's there. So things like bark and the branching habit, and in this case, this is beaked hazelnut, our native hazelnut. These little structures that are called catkins, these are the male flower buds for next year. They formed already back in summer, and the little hot dogs, they're about half an inch to an inch long, but they would elongate to 3, 4, 5 inches sometimes and turn kind of yellowish as they shed their pollen in early spring. It's one of the first plants to flower in spring up here, and it has separate male and female flowers on the same plant. That's a condition called monoecious, one house, same plant, two different flowers. The female flowers are in the bud axils. They're tiny, colorful maroon, but you hardly notice them because they're so small. But these male catkins really stand out in the winter on beaked hazelnut. This is our native sumac, Staghorn Sumac. We don't have any of the fruit clusters further down, but there are some up there. These kind of maroonish red clusters of fruit in that kind of pyramidal arrangement. This is an example of a dioecious plant. Dioecious means two house. Beaked hazelnut was monoecious, one house. This is two house, so separate male and female plants. Only the female Staghorn Sumac get those fruit clusters. So that adds a lot of winter interest in the north. But on the new growth, you can take a look over here, and this is where it gets the name Staghorn Sumac, like a stag or a deer's antlers, with this fuzzy velvet on it. You can see it up close. Very interesting. So the combination of these, that fuzzy first year growth and the fruits on the female plants gives Staghorn Sumac a lot of winter interest. This is American beech, one of the common climax trees up here in the mature northern hardwood forest, along with sugar maple and Canada hemlock. And it has a lot of winter interest. It's one of those trees, and trees in the oak family, this is in the oak family, tend to do this. On the younger trees and on the lower inside part of older trees, they'll hold their dried, withered leaves all winter. This is a condition called marcescence. They fall in the spring, but it adds a lot of color and movement and even sound in the winter. And this is a young one, and you can see the bark is smooth and gray, but that's maintained throughout the life of the tree. It's the only tree up here that doesn't develop a thick, corky bark. Even the big trees with trunks 2 feet across will have that smooth gray bark like that. But it's the marcescent leaves that really add a lot of interest to to American beech in the winter. Of course, the conifers, trees and shrubs, evergreens, add a lot of winter interest. It's the dominant color in plants up here in the north where we have a lot of conifers. And this is Canada hemlock with its short green needles. If you flip it underneath, they're silvery, and they have these wonderful little kind of egg-shaped cones about a ½ inch long. When they mature, they'll open up and shed their seeds, but it's the definition of a cute cone. We have a lot of hemlock up here. It's along with sugar maple and American beech, the dominant climax trees in the northern hardwood forest. And we're lucky to have a lot of them at the clearing. So Canada hemlock with its great foliage and its beautiful little cones. This is Ironwood, or American hop hornbeam. Oaks and beech are the ones that are most known for holding their dried, withered leaves over the winter, that marcescent quality. But Ironwood does it too, quite a bit. Not in the same family. This is in the birch family, but it holds a lot of its withered brown leaves over winter as well, adding a lot of movement and texture and sound sometimes. But it also has this wonderful, on younger trees, this wonderful cherry-like bark. It's in the birch family. This looks like birch bark when it's young too, or cherry bark. So it adds a lot of interest as well. Sometimes it kind of shines. So the combination of the nice bark and these marcescent leaves had a lot of interest on Ironwood, which is also called American hop hornbeam. This is a nice example of a beautiful architecture or branching habit. This is Leatherwood, one of my favorite shrubs, and it has this nice clean architecture branching habit that you really appreciate over the winter. Many shrubs are kind of twiggy and don't look that great in the winter. This one really has a nice look in the winter. It's almost like a scrunched down tree, like a miniature tree or bonsai tree. This is the one that has these, it's not so much in the winter because it's stiff now, but you can almost tie the branches in a knot during the growing season because they're so pliable. Pretty little yellow flowers in spring, little yellowish green berries in early summer, but I've always thought that it really comes into its own in winter because of its wonderful branching habit. Leatherwood. This is our common native rose, smooth rose, with beautiful pink flowers in early summer, and then it has these nice rose hips later in the season that sometimes persist into winter, adding some color. But the real show on smooth rose in winter is the bark color. It's not as bright as red twig dogwood, but it's pretty nice, especially when the sun's on it. It's called smooth rose because it doesn't have many thorns, a little bit at the base, but up here pretty much thornless. But nice bark color and some remnant fruits or rose hips over winter as well. Our last one is white pine, and there are some tall beauties around the Jensen Center, but here's a smaller one with its wonderful foliage, needles in groups of 5. It's one of the 5 needle pines, and when it gets older it'll produce these wonderful cones, kind of comma-shaped, can be up to 6 inches long, with resin building up on the outside of the scales. But they'll fall over the course of the year, but add a lot of interest hanging in the trees and even laying on the ground. So white pine, I call it the king of trees up here, but it's really the king and the queen because all conifers have both male and female flowers on the same plant. So white pine.